Across Europe, grand fortresses were built to protect and inspire awe. But some castles hold secrets far darker than their crumbling stones suggest. Today, we're exploring 3 castles with chilling pasts, where legends of the paranormal intertwine with brutal history. Houska Castle and the Pit to Hell, Chillingham Castle's torture-filled corridors, and Leap Castle's bloody betrayals all lend themselves to a unique kind of horror. Grab a torch and a mug of mead, and let us begin. Welcome to Houska Castle, an ancient fortress built deep in the woods of the Czech Republic. But this is no ordinary castle. It wasn't constructed to defend against invaders or even to house royalty. No. Houska Castle was built to seal something inside. Something dark. Something evil. Man, old castles are so cool. This medieval stronghold hides a terrible secret. Beneath its ancient stone walls lies what some call a gateway to hell, a bottomless pit so deep that no one has ever seen its end. And the locals, they believe this castle wasn't built to protect the people living in it, but to protect the world from the horrors lurking below. Houska Castle is certainly strange, and the architectural choices certainly reflect that statement. Many of the windows are fake. They're nothing more than solid glass panes set into the stone walls, with no rooms or spaces behind them. These empty, soulless windows give the castle an even more unsettling atmosphere, as if it's meant to deceive you and to hide something within its depths. The castle has no defensive walls, no strategic positioning, no kitchen, and, perhaps most bizarrely, there's no water source. It lacks the essential features of a functional medieval fortress. In fact, many have speculated that Houska wasn't designed for people to live in at all. And then there's the chapel, built directly over the infamous pit, believed to be the gateway to hell. It's said that the holy symbols and carvings within the chapel weren't placed there for worship, but as a desperate attempt to seal the evil below. Some say the chapel is the most haunted part of the entire castle, with visitors reporting an overwhelming sense of dread the moment they step inside. These strange symbols, hidden in plain sight, are believed to have been added to ward off whatever dark forces are imprisoned beneath the castle. But even centuries later, they may not be enough to contain what lurks below. The architectural oddities of Houska Castle seem to reflect its purpose, a structure designed not for comfort or defense, but as a prison for long-forgotten creatures and demonic forms. Every brick, every window, every stone seems to have been placed to keep whatever lies beneath from breaking free. But the question remains, is it still working? Legend has it that long before the castle was built, villagers spoke of strange creatures emerging from this bottomless pit. They claimed to see winged, half-human, half-animal beasts crawling out from the darkness. At night, these creatures would terrorize the locals, dragging people into the shadows, never to be seen again. And so, Houska Castle was born, built directly over the pit, not as a home, but as a prison. The pit is said to be so deep that no one has ever found the bottom. Some say that if you listen closely, you can still hear the screams of those who are pulled into it. But is this just a story, or is there something darker waiting below the surface? Well, in the early days of the castle, an experiment was conducted. A prisoner, desperate for his freedom, was lowered into the pit by the guards. They told him if he survived, he would walk free. But we know that didn't happen. As the prisoner descended, the guards began to hear his screams, not of fear, but of pure unbridled terror. They pulled him back up, but what they found was strange. The man, once young and strong, had aged decades in mere minutes. His hair had turned white, his skin withered. He whispered only one thing before he collapsed, dead from fright. "I saw them." Even after sealing the pit, the evil within Houska Castle seems to have spread through its walls. Visitors and caretakers have reported strange sounds echoing in the night. Whispers, footsteps, and unearthly growls. But there's more. The most famous spirit said to haunt these halls is the Green Lady. Murdered by her husband centuries ago, she now roams the chapel, her face twisted in sorrow, her cries echoing through the stone walls. Those who have seen her say she appears in the corner of your eye, just for a moment before disappearing into the shadows. But she's not alone. Many who have entered Houska Castle report feeling watched, an oppressive force weighing down on them as they walk through its endless corridors. Others have seen shadowy figures darting from room to room, always just out of sight. But Houska's dark history doesn't stop there. During World War II, the Nazis, obsessed with the occult and ancient legends, took over Houska Castle. But why? What was it about this fortress that fascinated them so much? Many believe it was this castle's sinister history, particularly the rumored gateway to hell beneath it. The Nazis were known for conducting occult research through the Ahnenerbe, a secret division of the SS dedicated to investigating ancient knowledge, supernatural powers, and even mystical artifacts. Houska Castle became one of their dark laboratories. While much of what occurred within Houska's walls remains shrouded in secrecy, rumors swirl about the experiments they conducted. Some claim the Nazis were trying to harness the energy from the supposed gateway to hell, hoping to use it as a weapon or a source of unimaginable power. They reportedly conducted horrifying human experiments, attempting to create super soldiers by tapping into the demonic forces sealed beneath the castle. Some believe these experiments focused on summoning entities from the pit, while others speculate that they sought to open the gateway fully, allowing dark forces to be unleashed into the world. But something went wrong. Witnesses have reported hearing tortured screams coming from deep within the castle during the Nazi occupation, and some believe that whatever they unleashed in those dark rituals was never fully contained. Strange apparitions and otherworldly sounds have only increased since the war ended. And then, as suddenly as they arrived, the Nazis abandoned Houska Castle. Did they realize the forces they were toying with were too dangerous, even for them? Or did they unleash something they couldn't control? Some locals say that after the Nazis fled, the castle's paranormal activity actually became stronger than ever. Could it be that the experiments the Nazis began here are still affecting the energy of the castle today? Could their dark rituals have opened the gateway once again, releasing entities that now wander the halls waiting for new victims? Today, Houska Castle draws thrill seekers and paranormal investigators from around the world. Many come searching for the truth behind the legends, but most leave with more questions than answers. Visitors report sudden drops in temperature, shadowy apparitions, and an overwhelming feeling of dread. Some claim to have seen the Green Lady, and others swear they've heard the growls of creatures no longer bound by the pit. So, would you dare to visit Houska Castle? Would you risk being trapped inside, just like the evil forces it was built to contain? Maybe, just maybe, they're still waiting for you. This is Houska Castle, and the gateway to hell is still open. Our next stop is Chillingham Castle, located in Northumberland, England, a place often hailed as the most haunted castle in Britain. Built in the 13th century, its history is soaked in blood, torture, and sinister occurrences. During the medieval period, Chillingham was a fortress at the heart of bloody battles between England and Scotland. But it's not the soldiers who died in combat that still roam these halls. No, it's those who met a far crueler fate inside the castle's torture chambers. The most notorious spirit is that of the Blue Boy, or Radiant Boy, who haunts the Pink Room. Visitors report hearing the sound of childlike wails echoing through the stone walls. It's said that the cries get louder just before midnight, followed by a flash of blue light. The ghost of this boy was only discovered after renovations in the 1920s unearthed his skeletal remains, buried deep inside a wall with remnants of blue clothing. But that's not all. The castle's dungeon is infamous for its torture devices, especially the Iron Maiden. One of the cruelest spirits here is John Sage, a sadistic torturer known for his relentless cruelty. He was nicknamed John Dragfoot and the Butcher of the Scots. Sage is said to wander the dungeon at night, his heavy boots clanging against the stone floor, as the echo of his victims' screams haunt the ears of the living. It's said he tortured 50 people a week over a period of 3 years, perhaps taking out his anger after mortally injuring his leg in battle. Many visitors report feeling suffocated or overwhelmed by a sense of dread in these underground chambers, almost as if the walls themselves are alive with pain. Some even say they can still hear the pops of bone when standing next to one of John's favorite devices, the rack, where victims would be stretched until they broke completely. If you're brave enough to visit Chillingham Castle, just remember, the spirits don't always stay silent. Our last location brings us to County Offaly, Ireland, where Leap Castle stands like a dark sentinel, watching over centuries of bloodshed and betrayal. Considered the most haunted castle in Ireland, Leap Castle's reputation is shrouded in treachery and murder, and it's the spirits of these violent deaths that refuse to leave. The most infamous spirit at Leap Castle is the Elemental, a sinister, malevolent presence said to reside in the castle's oldest tower. Descriptions of this entity vary, but many say it appears as a humanoid figure, cloaked in the shadows, with an unbearable stench of sulfur and decaying flesh. The origins of the elemental are unclear, but some believe it was summoned during occult rituals conducted by the castle's previous inhabitants. But the elemental is not alone. Leap Castle's most brutal hauntings stem from the infamous Bloody Chapel, where the O'Carroll family, who once ruled over the castle, carried out ruthless acts of treachery. It's said that one brother murdered another right in front of their family, spilling blood across the chapel's floor. This act of fratricide ignited a wave of violence and treachery that left the chapel cursed. Visitors frequently report cold spots, disembodied voices, and apparitions lingering in the chapel, reenacting the horrors of their deaths. And then there's the castle's opulette, a pit used to imprison, torture, and slowly kill victims. In the 1920s, workers discovered a secret dungeon beneath Leap Castle, filled with human bones. The name itself is derived from French, meaning to forget. The vicious O'Carroll family loved using it for just that purpose when disposing of their enemies, even going so far as to invite hired mercenaries to a feast at Leap after the dirty work was done, only to cut their throats and throw them down the pit. The oubliette was a death trap, designed to drop prisoners onto spikes below. Years later, when the pit was cleared out, it's said that 3 cartloads of bones were removed. Some say that the tortured souls of these victims still claw at the living, as the castle vibrates with the horrors inflicted within its walls. And chillingly, the current overseer of the castle claims a man lives down there. Occasionally he can be seen exiting and wandering the lower levels of the castle before slipping back down. Many have entered Leap Castle, but not all leave unscathed. The spirits that linger here are said to harbor a deep resentment toward the living, especially those who dare to disturb their eternal rest. Each of these castles holds a different kind of terror, whether it's the childlike cries of the blue boy at Chillingham, the looming presence of the Eternal at Leap, or the ancient evil supposedly sealed beneath Houska Castle. These places are not just relics of history, they are reminders that sometimes the dead do not rest in peace. So, if you're planning to visit any of these haunted castles, just remember, you may not be alone.